to join the conversation here because, Megan, when you're looking at Chipotle, the one thing that I think we've learned throughout this is that they were sort of, stay-at-home proof, if you will. And we know they were popular before. If anything, they've only gotten more popular as more people are, have less options, let's say.
Yeah, I think that you guys really nailed it earlier when you were talking about just how much Chipotle is ahead of the curve. We talk about this huge shift to digital, this huge shift to DDC, to direct to consumer, and Chipotle was already there. So whenever COVID hit, they were kind of ready to welcome in consumers with open arms, like, yes, welcome to our wonderful app that we will use to nudge you into buying a burrito bowl. We'll really twist your arm there. So I think that positioned Chipotle really well. You can see whenever we look, increasingly look at these digital orders. So not just delivery, but these app mentions, these mentions of, going through a Chipotlane, which I think is hysterical branding, but effective. And what we see is you can see this huge surge during COVID. I don't think that that's any shock. That was triple digit growth year over year for sure. Now we're settling in about 10% up year over year. So, they're still building their user base. Obviously, this has slowed down quite a bit since this initial, lockdown move into quarantine. But what's interesting is whenever you dive in and you dissect, okay, let's even look at delivery versus to go versus app. And while we see these third-party delivery specific mentions kind of trending down a little bit, it's being bolstered by Chipotle's own app mentions, by their own order ahead and pickup mentions. And I think that that's really what Chipotle wants to see, because as you saw in the last report, some of those delivery costs really weighed down on their earnings. And so I think looking ahead, Chipotle wants to have as robust a user base on its own app as it possibly can. And according to our data, they're continuing to draw in those users, albeit at a bit of a slower clip than at the onset of this quarantine and the onset of the pandemic.
Megan, all the points you make from someone in your age demographic, it's perfectly. But the fact that someone in my age demographic is embracing this. And how about the fact, Alex and Megan, that they send you little notes and messages and they say, hey, what are you having for lunch today? And they literally, it should be almost illegal that they do that. They send you little, hey, it's almost lunchtime. And you're like, oh, it is almost lunchtime. And I do want Chipotle. I mean, it is almost criminal what they do to lure you into their store. And it all works. They do an unbelievable job. And as soon as LikeFolio is able to get over their queso problems, I think it'll be a complete embracing of the Chipotle brand. Megan?
It's funny. We actually did a little bit of an update on queso after Chipotle released their new queso. It was much more well received by consumers versus the initial batch. So there's definitely some positive outlook on the queso. They definitely made improvements there. I think it's more melty, which is, what we really care about at LikeFolio, good queso. But overall, in general, we are seeing the strong digital trends from Chipotle. We're still seeing weakness whenever you talk about dine-in. So, those mentions, I think, are trending down about 29% year over year. I think that's to be expected. But I think especially, as we're looking ahead and as we're going into potentially, even more lockdowns, that people, going into winter may be more inclined to shift to that digital friend or maybe cave to that nudge like you talked about, Kevin. I know that they twist my arm more times than I'd like to admit, but this is really, really important. And I think that the company obviously knows it. That's why they're rolling out this digital kitchen. That's why they're doubling down on this order ahead and, trying to just grow that base so that they continue to understand what users want and then nudge them to help them complete that purchase.
I think it's a great point. I think it's something we've seen with Starbucks as well as you guys have mentioned too, with this kind of playing into convenience, playing into routines, and really just takes once. If you've cooked a month worth of meals at home in a row, and then you just get the Chipotle once, it's not going to take much to get it the second time that week as well. So, Megan, the only thing that I have to say is it's had an incredible run. I mean, like we said, basically 3x from where it was in March. Is the strength that you're seeing in the data enough to support the move higher in the stock so far?
I think that that really depends on how they continue to execute in a digital manner moving forward. I think that we're looking really closely at these app mentions, at these order ahead mentions, because that's where they can show the most success. So far we are seeing some softening in terms of growth. So in terms of, bringing new people to the table, there was a huge influx upon the onset of this pandemic. And obviously that softened. It's still pacing up about 10% year over year, but that's something that we've got to keep a close eye on. We would expect that to continue to grow, especially into the winter months. And if we don't see that, that's going to be a little bit troubling.